On a rare snowy day, we received sudden news from the apartment complex manager. My sister, Michelle's 2 kids had arrived amidst this weather. "Sorry, Nancy," Mom insisted. "Mom?" "She said she's going on a trip for a while and dropped us off on the main road a little while back." The manager shook his head in disapproval. "Please, just let us stay for 1 day." Upon hearing Lily's plea, Roy immediately responded. "What? That's impossible." "How come?" "There's no way, it's just for 1 day. Let's stay at home for a while." As I stood in the kitchen preparing a meal after getting the 2 kids warmed up with a shower, Roy approached me and asked, "Can you forgive this?" "I can't. It's about time we settle this, for the kids' sake too." "My name is Nancy. I'm 32 years old and work at a hotel's annex in a similar city. My husband, Roy, is 34. He works in the main building of the same hotel. We joined the company at the same time and married each other. Work is always busy with various customers, leaving us exhausted every day. Yet, I find fulfillment in it every day since it's the job I've wanted since high school. The only issue for us as a couple is not being able to have children, but we've gradually come to terms with it, realizing there's no point in rushing." Then, Michelle, who could be considered our arch-nemesis, reappeared in our lives. She came back carrying 2 children from different fathers. Michelle was indeed talented and adorable. From childhood, she often acted spoiled and demanding towards our parents, and her behavior was generally indulged. To our parents, she was the first daughter, talented and cute, so it seemed worth their while to invest in her, providing her with whatever lessons or tutoring she requested. Of course, they would let her quit as soon as she lost interest. This investment might be why. Until high school, she was the pride and joy daughter in various respects. However, when Michelle went off to college in a city like New York and started living alone, she changed. Her previous good girl facade vanished, she learned to enjoy nightlife, and her spending became extravagant. Or perhaps, that was her true character coming to light. Because she had been allowed to do whatever she wanted within our parents' view, it was just that no one had seen this side of her before. On the other hand, I was often said to have the opposite personality from Michelle. Indeed, that was true. Even if our parents doted on Michelle, recognizing her cuteness and intelligence as inevitable, I had no expectations from them. Whenever I made trivial requests to our parents, they seemed bothered, so I had given up on asking for anything. Back then, most of my clothes and belongings were hand-me-downs from Michelle. What suited Michelle's flashy appearance didn't necessarily suit me. But since they were wearable, I wore them obediently. Since I wasn't growing as well as Michelle, most of them were too big for me, but I made do, considering that larger sizes could cover for smaller needs. However, my paternal grandparents, who lived nearby, did care and secretly bought me things behind my mother and sister's back. I hid these items as much as possible because the first thing I received was taken away by my mother. Since then, I've made it a point not to accept anything tangible from my grandparents. I even asked them not to give me such gifts. When they heard my straightforward request, they looked sad. By the time I entered a local university, Michelle's situation had reached a point where it was uncertain whether she could graduate. In fact, she was on the verge of not being able to continue her enrollment. At this time, Michelle had completely forgotten her study habits and was entirely absorbed in playing. She managed to advance to her 4th year thanks only to her clever manipulations. She had her clique within the university take care of her numerous reports, while she herself was busy earning money to splurge on her then-favorite nightclubs. Initially, it was through regular part-time jobs, but as she fell deeper into it and needed more money, she began to rely on men. Her approach escalated over the years, eventually reaching the point where she was almost living as a mistress. Still, the money Michelle wanted was never enough, and she ended up using several credit cards on her own. But even that wasn't enough for Michelle's needs, and it seems she ended up using several credit cards by herself. She often asked her parents to send more money home for various reasons, despite rarely coming back to visit. It was Dad who first grew suspicious. "Make sure to come home for a visit once in a while." I remember hearing Dad's voice on the phone saying just that, quite often. But Michelle would only come back for the holidays. And even then, it was just for a day trip before quickly heading back to the city. However, Michelle's situation suddenly came to light through 3 different notifications. The first was from her university about her tuition being in arrears. The second was from her apartment landlord about unpaid rent. And the third was from several credit card companies demanding payment. My parents were genuinely shocked. It seemed odd to them because, until then, Michelle had been the pride of the family during her high school days. They couldn't believe she was capable of such things. Moreover, they were stunned to learn from the landlord that Michelle hadn't returned to her apartment for a long time. Essentially, Michelle had abandoned both her home and university, leaving only the financial issues for my parents to deal with. Then, 8 years ago, Michelle suddenly returned home with a child in tow, crying that the father had run off. Mom was immediately taken in by her sobbing daughter, and even Dad agreed it was best to let them stay, considering there was a baby involved. But then Michelle found a new man and left home again, taking the child with her. Dad was furious, beyond his patience, especially as Mom kept taking Michelle's side. In the midst of such family turmoil, I gave up on going to university. Instead, I decided to attend a vocational school for tourism, hoping to quickly become employable in my desired field. Fortunately, I managed to keep my grades up enough to qualify for a scholarship that didn't charge interest, planning to pay it back through my job. My paternal grandparents agreed with my decision and offered their support, saying I could come to them if repayment became difficult. After graduating, I found a job at a hotel in the city. The industry always has openings if you're not picky, but the work can be tough. Amid colleagues dropping out, Roy, who was 2 years my senior, and I started dating and eventually got married. We were both happily working at different branches of the same hotel. Then one day, out of the blue, Dad called.
Michelle did what?
His words were heavy with concern.
She's back, with another child, about a year old this time.
Apparently, she was still unmarried.
Is she living there again?
That's what Mom says. Dad replied, clearly at his wits' end. It's no wonder. Michelle had squandered so much money. The total loss to tuition mismanagement, unpaid rent, and credit card bills was close to $200,000. I was astounded when I heard the amount. It was hard to believe she could spend so much just on frivolities during her student days. As for me, I had been diligently repaying my student loan. Thankfully, it wasn't a long-term loan, and I managed to use my savings for early repayment discounts during bonus seasons. Dad apologized for the whole mess. He mentioned that Michelle was now living in a cheap apartment nearby with her 2 children. Seemingly unchanged. She was earning money through night jobs and frequently brought men back to her apartment. Come on, do me a favor. Lately, she'd figured out my days off and started showing up at our condo, not just at my parents' house, trying to leave my niece, Lily, and nephew, Ethan, with us. My work schedule varies, so I am home during the day sometimes. However, I need to sleep well before night shifts. So I've always refused Michelle's requests. You've gotten quite cheeky. She'd snap at me, glaring resentfully. But I had to stand my ground to protect our lives. I'd become quite the ogre in that regard. Whenever Michelle showed up, I'd call Dad right away. Opening the door to her while holding my phone out with Dad yelling at her on the line usually made her back off. So far, that has worked to keep her at bay. But this winter, on the day the biggest cold wave of the season was announced on the news, Roy and I happened to have matching days off. We were looking forward to spending a relaxing day together when we noticed the snow that had been fluttering down since dawn had started to pile up.
Unusual to see this much snow around here.
Yeah. As we chatted cozily, enjoying our brunch, the phone rang unexpectedly. It was from the condo's management.
Sorry to bother you, Nancy.
What's up? A package or something?
As for the luggage, a grade school kid holding a baby said they were heading to Nancy's place.
What?
When asked for a name, I figured it must be you.
I was surprised at those words.
Is it just the kids? Was there an adult nearby or something? No, they came in wobbling, holding the baby tightly in a sling. I'm sorry, but could you come down for a moment?
We looked at each other. Normally, we wouldn't let them into our home. But under these circumstances, that didn't seem possible.
Okay, we'll be right there.
We immediately went down to the manager's office together. There, sitting on a big chair, was Lily, holding baby Ethan tightly. Lily tried to stand up as soon as she saw us, but the manager cautioned her that it was dangerous.
Nancy, I'm so sorry. Mom had to. She just had to. Mom did?
She said she's going on a trip for a while and got dropped off by a taxi on the big road just before here. The manager also shook his head disapprovingly.
Please, could you let us stay just for one night?
Roy immediately said.
What? That's impossible. No way. It's impossible just for one day. Let's stay at our house for a while.
As he said this, Roy crouched down to the children's eye level. During this time, I took a good look at Lily. Her red coat was dirty and frayed. And it seemed too small for her now. It appeared she couldn't even button it up. She was wearing a fleece shirt underneath, but that too was dirty.
Let's go to our place anyway.
After bringing the two of them to our apartment, we quickly divided the tasks between us. First, I put the two chilled kids into the bath to warm up. Meanwhile, Roy went out to buy whatever was necessary for these kids. It was really good that both of us had our days off together. I shudder to think if it were just one of us, or if it were just a single day off. I was confident about leaving the shopping to Roy. We are always acquiring various knowledge to meet the sudden demands of hotel guests. For example, food for a 1-year-old infant. Or guessing a child's size at a glance. If needed suddenly, we have to prepare those immediately. Roy bought baby products at the drugstore and about 5 days' worth of clothes at a children's clothing store. Guessing the sizes from how close he got to Lily or when walking beside her. Meanwhile, I was finding out the situation from Lily while they were in the warm shower.
Did Mom go alone?
No, with the man who always comes.
The one who always comes?
I had heard from my mother that men were visiting Michelle's place. But to take them on a trip on such a day.
And did she say when she'll be back?
She said they're going to Hawaii. Lily let it slip out. She said she hates the cold winter, so she's gonna spend some time in warm Hawaii.
For some time.
I realized we needed to figure out the duration as soon as possible. Honestly, I was furious when I saw the condition of these children. I had always been angry at Michelle for easily getting pregnant and leaving her kids at her parents' house. Being unable to have children ourselves, the way she carelessly treated these kids was unforgivable. Some might say, why not just take care of them whenever she tries to leave them behind? But it's not about that. I wanted to address Michelle's attitude of easily dumping her responsibilities on others as if it were normal, and this incident has made it all too clear. Then, Roy came back.
I'm home. Can you grab this bag for me?
After getting Lily out of the bath, I had her wear one of my sweatshirts for now. The oversized garment looked like a dress on her. For Ethan, I wrapped him in a fleece blanket like a cape. Remembering we were in the middle of brunch when we got them dressed, I asked,
Are you hungry?
Lily nodded. I hurried to prepare meals for both of them too. Standing by the kitchen, Roy comes up to me and asks,
Hey, can you forgive her?
It's a simple, yet significant question.
I can't.
In our view, Lily skillfully soothes her little brother. She probably can change his diapers and feed him too. After all, it's a weekday when normal kids would be at school. Maybe even on a regular basis.
We really need to put an end to this, for the kids' sake.
2 weeks later, we were sitting in our car in a small apartment's parking lot, waiting. Checking the time. It's about time she should be returning home. Soon, a car smoothly stops in front of the apartment. As soon as I spotted the woman emerging from the car, I burst out and grabbed her arm.
What are you doing here, Nancy?
Meanwhile, Roy jumps out and heads to the driver's side of the stopped car, knocking on the window.
You're Bob, right? Please park the car and come out for a bit. Who are you?
Then, a woman who had been waiting in our car steps out and approaches Bob. Welcome back.
Why are you here? We were informed by Nancy here that you went on a supposed long business trip to Hawaii with this woman.
Bob's wife then drags her husband out. I, on the other hand, confront Michelle.
Michelle, I've disliked and rejected you up till now, but I've learned this time it's not enough just to reject you.
Huh? What are you talking about, Nancy?
Just come inside, will you?
Michelle gasps, probably never having seen me angry before. After giving a slight bow to the apartment manager standing with his arms crossed in front of the apartment, I declare, excuse us. As we informed you, we will be causing a bit of a disturbance. That's fine. The manager glances disdainfully at Michelle, whom I'm holding.
I've always noticed the kids being locked out and felt frustrated that I couldn't do anything. Go on and give it your all.
Thank you. By the way, Michelle, where do you think the kids are?
Aren't they with you? I sent them to your apartment.
Really? Are you worried? I ask mockingly.
Of course. If anything happens to those kids, I'll be charged with abandonment.
Half knowledge is such a nuisance. Then another person emerges from our car.
Who are you?
I'm a lawyer. Now, let's have a detailed talk, Michelle.
Oh, and your children are safe and sound.
We lead the two towards Michelle's apartment.
The door's open? And what's with all these?
Michelle is startled and panicky. No wonder. Indicating a large number of people inside, despite her having locked the door. 2 weeks in Hawaii, quite the luxury.
Dad.
No, it wasn't just Dad there.
It's been a while, Michelle. Still hooking up with married men, I see. Huh? Why are you guys here?
Michelle can't believe these two are in front of her.
You remembered them, sister. It was quite a task finding these gentlemen. This is John, Lily's father, and that's Kay, Ethan's father. You haven't forgotten, have you?
Then John stands up, grabs Michelle by the collar, and storms into the room, berating her.
Hey, what did you do with my child? You had no right to take her too. Well, at that time, your wife was about to sue me for alimony.
We can still do that now. The lawyer adjusts his glasses and responds. I don't need the kids, but I still want you to pay alimony.
Nancy! Why are they here? This is all your fault, isn't it?
2 weeks can be surprisingly long. As Michelle screams, I casually take off my shoes, as if it's all trivial. Indeed, 2 weeks can be quite long. We first brought the kids to our parents' house after the snow settled that evening. It was a sudden visit, but our parents were shocked that we had brought the kids with us.
What have you done?
Dad was furious at what Michelle had done to the kids, his temples throbbing with anger.
But if she was with a man, maybe this time she'll marry him. What are you talking about?
It seemed like Dad's anger exploded towards Mom.
It's all because you were too soft on her when she came back before. That's why she's become so brazen.
Dad. I cut off his words. Let's not blame Mom right now, please.
Right now, I have some things I want to look into before Sis comes back.
That's right.
Otherwise, these kids might end up losing their lives.
Our parents looked at us, shocked.
Their lives? Actually, this time too, if our apartment didn't have a resident manager, who knows how they would have ended up, frozen. Especially since they were wearing this when they arrived this morning.
Roy said that, showing our parents the clothes the kids had come in.
Is this all they had, Roy?
That's all.
It doesn't fit them at all.
A dirty fleece shirt, unwashed for who knows how long. The frayed coat was clearly too narrow and short. I asked Lily.
Doesn't your mom buy you new clothes?
How sad it was that the child fell silent at that question. Even Mom seemed to have some thoughts on this and gave us the contact information for the shop Michelle had mentioned. So, the next day, I was the one who went there first. What I heard was that Michelle had taken a 2-week vacation to go to Hawaii with one of the customers. The owner at the shop was hesitant to spill too much about a customer, but when I told her about the kids being left out in a snowstorm, she slammed the table in anger.
Michelle! I knew she had kids. But that's just not right.
Thankfully, she was someone who believed in doing the right thing. She couldn't give me the customer's home address directly, but she did tell me which company he was from and gave me several photos of the two together. From there, I went straight to the company, showed them a photo of Michelle, and said, my sister is currently missing, which wasn't entirely a lie. Bob from the company was on vacation. But his boss came out and took it seriously when I said I was his sister's sibling and that she had left her kids behind. He couldn't give me Bob's phone number directly. But he contacted his home for me. When contacted, Bob's wife was shocked. She thought he was on a business trip. The boss seemed to know Bob's wife well and believed us. Taking the matter seriously. Bob's wife then wanted to get in touch with us. So I gave her my contact information, and she called me directly. From there, Bob's wife and I started working together. Meanwhile, Roy, with our parents and the kids, went to the apartment manager to get into Michelle's room to search for clues about the kids' fathers. Since our parents were the guarantors for the apartment, we managed to get the keys. My mom found both kids' birth certificates, and from there, we traced back to the hospital where Michelle had given birth. At one of the hospitals, we found a lead on the father. Or rather, the father had been searching for us. We hurriedly contacted John and heard his story. It turned out, during a rough patch in his marriage, due to not being able to have kids, he had an affair with Michelle, which resulted in a child. He had intended to divorce and remarry Michelle. But she ran away. As a result, John reconciled with his wife. This wife was a truly kind person, wanting to help if the child was found to be unhappy. On the other hand, Ethan's father, Kay, was already divorced. Finding him took some effort, but having our parents around was a big help. Kay was angry at Michelle for running away without paying alimony and wanted to send her back to his ex-wife as soon as she was found.
But I can't raise the child. All right.
That's how we got the approval to bring them to Michelle's place. And now, surrounded by people I had involved, Michelle was almost in tears.
Are all of you teaming up to blame me? Blame? That's an understatement.
John's voice was fierce towards someone he had been searching for years.
Me too?
Of course. Bob, brought in by his wife, was also flustered. Amidst this, the lawyer cleared his throat and started.
Let's settle this one by one, shall we? Who's first?
Bob's wife raised her hand.
I'm divorcing my husband and will claim alimony from both of them. What?
Of course.
When I checked with the company, all that business trip and overtime stuff you told me was a lie. You were meeting with this woman.
And then glaring at Michelle, and you, leaving your kids like that.
What? A woman abandoned by her husband has something to say? Unbelievable. I was the one taking care of this man, who can't father children.
That's enough, the lawyer interjected.
So, we've gathered various pieces of evidence of your affair, and your company is already aware.
Bob slumped down at that. Next, please.
That would be me.
Raising his hand was Ethan's father, Kay.
After finding out Michelle was located, I contacted my ex-wife, and she handed this over to me.
The lawyer took an envelope filled with documents from Kay. I see.
This is the alimony bill that was supposed to be given to Michelle during your divorce.
Right.
She disappeared before we could settle that. I've paid my part, and now Michelle will pay the same amount to her. Now, of all times?
Michelle panicked at that, and then John raised his hand.
My wife also wants alimony from you.
Michelle gasped in fear.
And custody of my daughter. I've heard the story. She can't possibly stay with you.
Michelle's expression changed.
Wait, if you're taking the child, we could just settle with the child support I've already paid, right? Michelle, you don't understand. What do you mean? Alimony is an issue between you and the other wives. Child support is a right that belongs solely to your daughter. So what? That can't be settled. That's all.
Michelle was at a loss for words.
So, Michelle, you will be facing 3 claims of alimony. I can't pay. I don't have that kind of money.
She glanced at her father. But her father declared. Impossible.
All this time, you've been paying, haven't you? Do you know how much debt you previously accumulated? $200,000. The money for covering those debts came from our savings for renovating our house. Because of you, we can't even afford to fix our old house.
It seemed Michelle finally felt the seriousness of her father's intention.
I won't give you a penny more. In fact, I'd like you to pay it back. You'll work and tirelessly pay back the alimony.
That's impossible, with kids to take care of. Lily might be taken by him, but Ethan is still.
Don't worry about that.
Roy then raised his hand.
We will take care of Ethan. You guys will. What a relief. Yes, we will. And don't ever come near us again. Do you have the right to say that to me?
Michelle barked. But then it happened.
Unfortunately for you, you'll have to stay away from the kids either way.
Opening the unlocked door was easy. A detective walked in, showing his badge to Michelle.
Michelle, you are under arrest for child neglect. What? But those kids! On the day of the heavy snow, making an 8-year-old walk from the main road with a 1-year-old in tow, without knowing if we were home, our apartment manager can testify to that.
I raised my voice at Michelle.
If we hadn't been home and there was no manager, where would you have waited? Frozen? If you knew and still did it, that's even worse.
Indeed, agreed the detective.
There have also been prior instances of you leaving the children unattended.
Well, we'll discuss this in detail at the station. The waiting officers took Michelle by her arms.
Nancy! This is all you're doing. I won't forgive you, I won't.
You don't have to.
But do you even have time for that? You can't escape alimony this time.
I threw those words at Michelle as she was taken away by the police, hurling insults at us. Following the investigation, Michelle was charged not only with child neglect but also with a staggering number of other crimes, including marriage fraud and theft. As a result, she was sentenced to a long stay behind bars, insisting she was not at fault, but her numerous other crimes were too overwhelming. And now, facing 3 alimony claims. It's unlikely Michelle can escape anymore. She'll spend a lifetime paying off her debts. And at home, my father asked my mother to sign the divorce papers, acknowledging his part in Michelle's upbringing but realizing her coddling was the primary cause. Mom, having been a housewife all her life, feared divorce more than anything. Though divorce was momentarily avoided, Mom would have to live modestly under Dad's roof from now on. Sometimes I get calls filled with complaints from her, but I've decided to ignore them all. I have my own thoughts about my mother. I wish she would fully contemplate what she has done and what she hasn't done for me. Ethan. Today is the day Lily is being taken to live with the John couple. In front of us, who are seeing her off, Lily is crying, not wanting to be separated from Ethan. John lived too far to just drive over quickly from here.
Lily, first thing you're going to do is go to school and make some friends.
This child hasn't been able to attend school properly because of her mother. When her additional crimes became clear, it was evident she had been moving from place to place. Although she's supposed to be in 3rd grade, she can't even do things learned in 1st grade properly. So, we decided to first catch her up to a certain level before enrolling her in elementary school.
It might be hard going forward.
John's wife cheerfully responded to my words.
As long as she's healthy, she'll be fine.
And she continued.
I really can't understand how anyone could neglect such a sweet child.
John's wife and I shared the same sentiment. Children don't come to those who desperately want them, yet Michelle, who neglects them, ended up with 2. John's wife is truly a good person. Initially, Lily had stayed with us for a while. Then, as John's procedures progressed, he introduced himself as Lily's real father. Lily was initially confused, not knowing she had a father, but she quickly warmed up to the couple's kindness. She probably hadn't been able to act spoiled in her previous life.
I think you've done a great job,
I told John's wife.
That's not true. You don't know how much his mistake has tormented me.
She smiled and shook her head.
But, I always wanted a child, and if my body couldn't produce one, then I wanted his child.
In other words, she said she had changed her perspective.
It's like I borrowed a womb. He gave birth to Lily for me.
That might indeed be the case. For me, Ethan is just my nephew. But for me, who always wanted children, he's someone my affection transfers to. Of course, persuading my in-laws was necessary to take him in, but Roy really worked hard on that. The fact that an 8-year-old child braved the snow to bring him to us means it was destiny for him to be with us. Suddenly becoming a mother without any preparation. I now think of growing as a parent with the help of our parents. Come visit me.
Sure, stay healthy.
We'll definitely visit. And you come visit us too. As Lily got into the car, I waved at her, wishing from the bottom of my heart for all the happiness she missed out on so far.